Hi everyone, welcome to Azad Revenge Stories channel. She's just a secretary. Why is she even here? Those words sliced through the conference room. 12 pairs of eyes turned to stare at me. I felt heat crawl up my neck as Derek's voice hung in the air between us. The PowerPoint slide I had just been explaining blurred as my eyes filled with tears I refused to let fall. 3 years of night classes, $87,000 in student loans, countless weekends sacrificed, all reduced to just a secretary in front of the entire executive team. I'm Naomi Pierce, 32. And before I tell you what happened next in that boardroom, I want you to know this isn't just another revenge fantasy. This is the story of how I finally stopped shrinking myself to make mediocre men feel bigger. Before I go further, please like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to hear from you, and trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. I didn't start out planning to humiliate Derek Hollister. I actually started out admiring him. That's the thing about workplace bullies. They don't announce themselves on day one with name tags. They smile to your face while they sharpen their knives behind your back. Westlake Partners was my dream company, a mid-sized investment firm with a reputation for innovation and employee development. I'd applied 3 times before finally landing an interview. When I walked through those glass doors for the first time as an employee, I felt like I'd made it. The reception area had this massive abstract painting that cost more than my car. The lighting was soft, but bright enough to make everyone look like they just returned from vacation. The desk chairs were actually comfortable. After years of working at companies where the break room microwave was held together with duct tape, this felt like another universe. My role was officially Strategic Operations Coordinator, that perfect corporate title that could mean anything or nothing. In reality, I was hired to help reorganize their client management systems and bring a fresh perspective to their operational workflow. I had an MBA from Temple with a focus on organizational efficiency. I'd worked my way through school as an executive assistant, so I knew how things really flowed in an office, not just the theory. But here's what I learned fast. Some men only see what they expect to see. From day one, Derek Hollister, the director of client acquisitions, addressed all his questions about my projects to my male colleagues. He'd walk right past my desk to ask Jason or Michael what progress I had made on something. If I spoke up in meetings, he'd wait for me to finish and then restate my exact point as if it were his original thought. Great insight, Derek, someone would inevitably say, while I sat there feeling like I was slowly turning invisible. At first, I told myself what women have been told for generations. Don't make waves. Be patient. Prove yourself through work. Maybe he's just awkward with new people. So I put my head down. I restructured our client intake process, saving the company approximately 20 hours of labor per week. I created a dashboard that gave real-time updates on account status that the entire team could access. I stayed late. I came in early. I brought solutions, not problems. And still, Derek referred to me as the new girl in meetings. 3 months in, 6 months in, could you grab us some coffee before we start? He asked, despite my name being on the meeting agenda as a presenter. Each time I would smile tightly and say, I'm actually here for the presentation, Derek. And he would look momentarily confused, as if I'd started speaking in tongues. My direct supervisor, Elaine, was supportive but overwhelmed with her own battles. Just document everything, she advised during one of our one-on-ones. Build your allies. This is unfortunately how it goes sometimes. The worst part wasn't Derek. It was watching myself become smaller. I started prefacing my ideas with, this might be silly, but I found myself dressing more conventionally, toning down my natural enthusiasm, second-guessing every email. I was contorting myself to fit into the narrow space he had assigned me. Then came the Thornton account. Thornton Holdings was a potential client worth $30 million in investments. Everyone wanted to be on that acquisition team. I'd done extensive research on their portfolio needs and had identified a customized approach that aligned perfectly with their stated goals. I put together a presentation and sent it to my supervisor, who forwarded it to Martin Coleman, our CEO. 2 hours later, I was called into his office. This analysis is exactly what we need, Martin said. sliding my report across his desk. "I want you on the pitch team." My heart nearly burst. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down. The meeting's on Thursday. Derek's leading, but I want you there to explain this section on sustainable investment options. Thornton's big on environmental impact." That night, I bought a new blazer, dark blue with subtle pinstripes. Professional but confident, I rehearsed my section until my roommate begged me to stop. I prepared answers for potential questions. I was ready. Thursday morning, I arrived early to set up the conference room, the big one with floor to ceiling windows overlooking the river. I arranged water bottles, tested the projector, made sure the chairs were evenly spaced. Little details that probably no one would notice, but they mattered to me. Executives began filtering in around 9:45 for the 10:00 a.m. meeting. Martin nodded at me approvingly. Elaine gave me a subtle thumbs up. I took my seat halfway down the table, heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could see my blouse moving. The Thornton representatives arrived exactly on time. 4 men and 1 woman, all in impeccable suits that whispered old money. Introductions went around the table. When it came to me, Derek smoothly cut in. "And this is Naomi, one of our support staff. She's helping with the presentation today." Support staff, not strategic operations coordinator, not MBA, not the person who developed the custom analysis you're about to see. I corrected him gently. "Actually, I'm the strategic operations coordinator. I developed the sustainability analysis we'll be discussing." Derek's smile never faltered, but something hardened in his eyes. The meeting proceeded. Charts were shown, numbers were discussed, growth projections were debated, and then Martin said the words I'd been waiting for. "Now, for the sustainability approach, I'll hand it over to Naomi, who developed this model specifically with Thornton in mind." I stood, clicked to my slide, and began. When analyzing Thornton's current portfolio and stated 5-year goals, I identified an opportunity to increase ESG investments while maintaining your target growth rate. "As you can see from this projection, I think what Naomi is trying to say," Derek interrupted, standing up beside me, "is that we've looked at some green bonds that won't hurt your bottom line too much. She's put together some basic numbers, but I can walk you through what they really mean." I stopped, PowerPoint clicker frozen in my hand. The room went quiet. "Actually, Derek," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "these aren't basic numbers. This is a comprehensive analysis of look," he said, turning to the clients and completely talking over me. "She's just a secretary who's helped gather some data. I appreciate her enthusiasm, but let me give you the real insights here." That's when Martin spoke up. "Derek, Naomi prepared this entire section. Please let her continue." Derek's face flushed slightly, but he pressed on with a laugh that made my skin crawl. "Martin, with all due respect, we're talking about a $30 million account. She's just a secretary. Why is she even here? Let me handle the complex parts." The room froze. 12 executives stared at me. Our team and theirs. I could read every expression. Embarrassment, discomfort, curiosity about what would happen next. The woman from Thornton narrowed her eyes, not at me, but at Derek. In that moment, something inside me that had been bending and bending for months finally snapped. I set down the clicker very deliberately. My hands should have been shaking, but they weren't. I felt strangely calm, like I was watching myself from somewhere else in the room. I have an MBA from Temple University with a focus on organizational efficiency and sustainable business practices, I said, my voice low but clear. I worked as an executive assistant through graduate school, which gave me intimate knowledge of how investment decisions are actually implemented, not just theorized. I'd spent 3 weeks analyzing Thornton's specific needs and creating this custom approach. I looked directly at Derek. "I am not just anything." Then I turned back to the clients. "The model I've developed shows that by reallocating 12% of your current portfolio into these specific ESG investments, you can actually increase your projected returns by 2.3% while reducing environmental impact. The data supporting this is on page 17 of your packets." The room was silent as the Thornton executives flipped to the page. The woman, Catherine Thornton herself, I later learned, looked up first, a slight smile on her face. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we've been looking for," she said. "Please continue." I finished my presentation without further interruption. Derek remained standing for an uncomfortable minute before slowly sinking back into his chair. His face had gone from red to white. When the meeting ended, Catherine Thornton approached me directly. "That was impressive, Miss Pierce. Not just the analysis, but your composure. We should talk more about your ideas." As the room cleared out, Martin asked me and Derek to stay behind. My calm was beginning to crack. Was I about to be reprimanded for creating a scene? Would this be turned around on me somehow? Martin closed the door and turned to face us. The silence stretched for what felt like minutes. "Derek," he finally said, "my office." Now, after Derek left, Martin looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I've clearly missed something significant happening in my own company. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. That presentation was excellent," he continued, "but I'm more concerned about what just happened. How long has this been going on?" The question broke something loose in me. All the small slights, the dismissals, the being talked over and around, they came pouring out. Martin listened without interrupting, his expression growing more troubled with each example. When I finished, he nodded slowly. "Thank you for your honesty. This will be addressed. And Naomi, that analysis really was brilliant." I left the conference room feeling hollow, but somehow lighter. I'd stood up for myself, but I had no illusion that anything would really change. Men like Derek always failed upward. The most I could hope for was that he'd be warned to be more subtle in his dismissal of women. Back at my desk, I started gathering my things. I wasn't planning to quit exactly, but I needed to get out of the building. I needed air and space to think. My phone buzzed with a text from Elaine, CEO's office. 3:00 p.m. "You okay?" I texted back a thumbs up. I didn't entirely feel, and tried to focus on mundane work tasks for the next 3 hours. By 255, my stomach was in knots as I rode the elevator to the executive floor. Martin's assistant showed me in immediately. To my surprise, Derek was already there along with Elaine and someone from HR I'd only met during orientation. "Naomi, please sit down," Martin said, gesturing to an empty chair, notably not next to Derek. What happened next would change everything, but not in the way any of us expected. I settled into the chair, smoothing my skirt with clammy hands. Martin's office felt too warm, the silence too thick. On his desk sat a folder with my name on it. "I've spent the last 2 hours reviewing your personnel file," Martin began, hands folded on the desk and speaking with several team members. Derek sat unnaturally still, his usual confidence nowhere visible. He wouldn't look at me. "Naomi," Martin continued, "would you be comfortable explaining to everyone what you shared with me after the meeting?" My throat tightened. This felt like a trap being asked to publicly accuse a superior of misconduct. I'd seen this movie before. The woman speaks up, gets labeled difficult, and somehow becomes the problem. But something had broken loose inside me in that conference room. I couldn't stuff it back down if I tried. "For the past 9 months," I said, my voice quiet but steady, "I've been consistently undermined, talked over, and misrepresented by Derek. Today wasn't an isolated incident. It was just the first time it happened in front of clients and senior management." Derek shifted in his chair. "That's a complete exagger." "I'm not finished," I said, surprising even myself with my firmness. "I've had my ideas attributed to male colleagues. I've been asked to take notes in meetings I organized. I've been introduced as administrative support despite my title and qualifications, and I've documented every instance." The HR representative, Janelle, I now remembered, leaned forward. "You've kept records." I nodded. "Dates, times, witnesses, exact quotes when possible. I didn't plan to use them. I just needed to remind myself I wasn't imagining things." Janelle and Martin exchanged glances. "Well," Derek finally spoke, his voice regaining some of its smooth confidence, "I think this is being blown out of proportion. If Naomi felt slighted by some misunderstandings about her role, she should have come to me directly instead of building this case against me." The way he said case made it sound like a dirty word. "Derek," Martin said, his tone measured. We've spoken to 7 other employees who independently corroborated Naomi's account. This isn't about feeling slighted. It's about a pattern of behavior incompatible with our leadership standards. Derek's face flushed. So I'm being what? Fired over a comment in a meeting. This is insane. You're not being fired, Martin replied, but you are being removed from the Thornon account, effective immediately. Derek's mouth fell open. The Thornton account was the crown jewel, the path to partnership. You can't be serious. That's my account. I brought them in. Actually, Elaine spoke for the first time, sliding a sheet toward Martin. The initial contact came through Naomi's college alumni network. She flagged them as a potential client 3 months ago in an email that appears to have been overlooked. I'd forgotten about that email. I'd noticed Thornton mentioned in a business journal and recognized the name from a Temple alumni event. I'd sent Derek a detailed brief on why they'd be an ideal client for our new sustainability platform. He'd never acknowledged it. Furthermore, Martin continued, Catherine Thornton called me personally after the meeting. She was quite clear about who she wants handling their account moving forward. He turned to me. Naomi, they were impressed with your analysis and your composure under pressure. They've requested you be the lead contact for their portfolio. The room tilted slightly. I'd come to this meeting prepared to be gaslit, victim blamed, or at best given empty promises about looking into the situation. I hadn't prepared for this. I'm not qualified to lead an account that size, I said automatically, the voice of self-doubt that had become my constant companion. Your credentials and work suggest otherwise, Martin replied, unless you don't want the position. Of course, I wanted it, but doubt nodded at me. Was this a setup? Give the complaining woman an impossible task. Watch her fail. Problem solved. I want it, I said straightforward, but I need proper support and authority to succeed. Martin nodded. You'll report directly to Elaine with a new title, Senior Investment Strategist, and you'll have resources to build your team. He slid a document across the desk. This outlines the compensation adjustment that comes with the new responsibilities. The number at the bottom of the page made me blink twice. A 47% increase. This feels, I searched for the right word, deserved. Elaine finished for me. Derek stood abruptly. This is complete, he snapped, abandoning his corporate polish. You're promoting her for what? Playing the victim? Creating drama? Meanwhile, I'm being sidelined for a minor comment. Derek Janelle from HR warned. I strongly suggest you consider your next words carefully. He ignored her. Everyone's so afraid of looking politically incorrect that we are promoting people based on feelings instead of qualifications. I have 8 years of experience. She has what, a year plus an MBA from Temple. Not even a top-tier school. The room went completely silent. Even Derek seemed to realize he'd gone too far. Martin stood slowly. Derek, you're suspended pending a full review of your conduct. Please clean out your desk and surrender your badge to security. We'll be in touch about next steps. After Derek was escorted out, Martin apologized again. I failed you as a CEO. He said simply, I should have seen this happening in my company. The culture reflects leadership, and clearly we have work to do. The meeting ended with promises of changes, follow-ups, and support. But as I walked back to my desk, I felt strangely empty. Yes, Derek was facing consequences. Yes, I'd been promoted, but it didn't feel like triumphant. Felt like exhaustion. Why did it take a public humiliation for my work to be recognized? Why had I needed to be perfect, unflappable, and meticulously documented just to be treated with basic professional respect? 3 days later, I was setting up my new office when Catherine Thornton herself appeared in my doorway. Getting settled in? She asked, glancing around the half-unpacked space. I stood quickly. Mrs. Thornton, I wasn't expecting you. The quarterly review isn't until she waved away my formality. Call me Catherine, please. And I'm not here about the portfolio. She closed the door behind her and took a seat opposite my desk. I wanted to talk to you about what happened in that meeting. My stomach tightened. I apologize for any discomfort. Stopped, she said, not unkindly. No apologies. What I saw in that room was something I've seen countless times in my 30 years in finance. The difference was your response." She leaned forward. "Do you know how I built Thornton Holdings?" I nodded. "You inherited a small family investment firm and expanded it 16-fold over 2 decades. That's the sanitized version," she said with a small smile. "The reality is messier. I inherited a failing business from my father who never believed a woman could run it. My brother was the intended successor, but he had a gambling problem and nearly bankrupted us. The board, all men my father's age, voted unanimously against my leadership appointment. Every bank denied my loan applications. I hadn't known any of this. I built this company by outlasting every man who told me I couldn't," she continued, sometimes loudly, sometimes quietly, but always persistently. "What I saw in that conference room wasn't just a woman with excellent financial analysis. I saw someone who refused to be erased." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small box. "This was given to me by the first female mentor I ever had. I've carried it for 20 years. Inside was a simple silver pin in the shape of a door key. She told me it was a reminder that women before us picked locks on doors that were closed to them so we could eventually hold the keys." Catherine closed the box and slid it across to me. "Now it's yours." I didn't know what to say. "I thank you, but why me?" "Because what happened to you happens every day in boardrooms everywhere, and most companies wouldn't have done a damn thing about it." She stood to leave. "We chose Westlake partly because of your analysis, yes, but mostly because of how the company responded. Real change happens when power acknowledges its blind spots." After she left, I sat holding that small silver key, thinking about all the women who had come before Meth, ones who hadn't been believed, who didn't have documentation, whose male colleagues closed ranks against them, who didn't have CEOs willing to listen, who couldn't afford to risk their jobs by speaking up. My revenge against Derek hadn't been about destroying him. It had been about refusing to participate in my own diminishment any longer. The next 6 months transformed not just my career, but our entire company culture. Martin created a task force to examine gender dynamics across all departments with real budget and authority. Elaine was promoted to the executive team. The board approved a comprehensive salary review that uncovered and corrected significant gender disparities. As for Derek, he wasn't fired, not directly, but the suspension led to a mutual separation 2 weeks later. I heard he landed at a competitor where he told anyone who would listen that he was forced out by politics. Maybe someday he'd understand what actually happened, but I doubted it. Men like Derek rarely saw their own reflections clearly. The Thornton account flourished under my management. 6 months in, they increased their investment by another 15 million. My team, intentionally diverse in gender, age, and background, developed innovations that attracted 3 more major clients. 1 year after that fateful meeting, I was invited to speak at a finance industry conference about sustainable investment models. As I walked onto the stage, I touched the small silver key pin on my lapel. The moderator introduced me. "Our next speaker is Naomi Pierce, Senior Investment Strategist at Westlake Partners and the architect behind their industry-leading ESG portfolio approach." No one called me just anything. Looking out at the audience, I spotted an all too familiar pattern. Men in the front rows, women clustered further back. Old habits die hard. So I began my talk differently than planned. "Before I dive into sustainable investment strategies, I'd like to invite anyone sitting in the back who wants a better view to come fill these empty seats in the front row." There was an awkward pause, then movement as several young women made their way forward. I waited until they were settled before continuing. "Thank you. Now we can all see and be seen clearly." That day I didn't just present investment data. I told my story, not with bitterness, but with honesty about being undermined and overlooked, about documenting everything, about speaking up, about the cost of silence and the power of finally using your voice. Afterward, a line of people waited to speak with me, mostly women with their own stories, their own jerks, their own moments of being made invisible. I listened to each one, recognizing the same pain and determination I'd carried. One young analyst handed me her business card with a note scrolled on the back. "You made me brave enough to ask for the promotion I deserve. Thank you." That card sits on my desk today next to Catherine's silver key. reminding me that the most powerful form of revenge against those who try to diminish you isn't their downfall. It's your rise and the doors you open for others as you climb. The truth is I never wanted Derek to fail. I just needed to succeed on my own merits, to be seen fully for my work, my intelligence, my contribution, to not have to be twice as prepared, twice as credentialed, twice as careful, just to be taken half as seriously. What happened that day in the boardroom wasn't just about an MBA degree or a man's casual cruelty. It was about the moment I decided I was done making myself smaller to make insecure men feel bigger. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd spoken up sooner, if I hadn't waited until I was pushed to my breaking point, if I hadn't needed a public humiliation to recognize my own worth. But then I remember what Catherine told me. Change doesn't always come from grand gestures. Sometimes it comes from one person finally saying enough when they've been quietly bending for too long. I don't know who needs to hear this today, but you are not just anything. Your credentials matter. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. And if someone tries to make you invisible, remember that you have the power to bring yourself back into focus. Document everything. Build your allies. Know your worth. And when the moment comes, and it will come, stand firmly in your truth, not with rage, though you'll feel it, not with vengeance, though you'll want it, but with the quiet, unshakable certainty that you belong exactly where you are. That's the revenge that changes everything, not just for you, but for everyone watching, for everyone coming after you, for every woman who's ever been told she's just anything less than who she truly is. Have you ever been underestimated at work or school? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if you found something valuable in mine, please subscribe. There's more where this came from. We rise by lifting others. And sometimes that starts by simply telling the truth about how far we've had to climb. I invite you to subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel. Like this video and support me further by hitting the hype button so the story in this video can be heard by many more people. Thanks to all.